Okay. We're doing supply and demand, chapter 2.
Yay.
Take 2. So markets, yeah, like markets are the kind of the framework of everything. It's the basis of where economics goes down. It's like where the buyers and sellers are linked to carry out some kind of exchange. So like at a grocery store or a grocery market, that's where a buyer buys groceries from the seller, or something online, so you don't have to be in the same place. It would be something like Craigslist, where the buyer and seller are linked via Wi-Fi, internet, whatever you want to call it.
And yeah, like markets haven't just existed in like modern times when you can see more apparently how the exchange of goods happens, but it's existed since like the start of time basically, and how people have had to trade with each other in some capacity to survive. And that is also a market, even if it's not using money, it's using trade of things like food for water or whatever. So.
Bartering is still markets.
Yes.
So ceteris paribus, Latin. So ceteris paribus is this idea that all things are equal. So we're talking about supply and demand. We usually talk about it in the framework of something being ceteris paribus. So when you look at shifts along a supply demand curve, you assume that the only things that are changing are the price or the quantity, depending on what you're looking at, and you don't look at all the other factors that are changing, which we'll talk about later on in this presentation. Ceteris paribus.
I'm going to say the same. Okay. Demand. Well, demand is a good, or just going off the PowerPoint, is demand of a good is the amount of a good a consumer is willing and able to purchase at a specific price.
So basically, a consumer can want, like in the previous presentation, a consumer can want a Ferrari but not be able to purchase that Ferrari at a specific price, and that person wouldn't be considered on the curve. So eventually, if you get to a high enough price, you'll have no one demanding it because no one will be able to afford that good. So the law of demand is also pretty important. There's also a law of supply, which is the exact opposite. So the law of demand is basically that there's a negative correlation between price and quantity in respect to demand. So if you have an increase in price, you have a decrease in the quantity demanded, or if you have an increase in the quantity demanded, you have a decrease in price.
Yeah, it's basically just how much a person is able to, or want something, basically.
Yeah. So, graphing time. So basically we're going to learn how to graph individual demand, which is just basically how much a specific person demands something. So everyone get out some graph paper.
And I'll go do stuff on the board.
Yeah, go do it on the board, Trinek. What a cool guy. So the idea is that as the price of chocolate bars goes up, the quantity of the bars demanded goes down, as can be seen by the chart. So start off with the price of $1, and you want 10 chocolate bars because you have $10 and you want as many chocolate bars as you can have. Or you don't have to. Okay, you have a certain amount of money, and you only want 10 chocolate bars at the price of $1. And if you increase the price of chocolate bars, your demand for those chocolate bars goes down accordingly, because you don't want to have to pay as much for a good. And this continues as you go up in price. So pretty simple. This is only an individual. It's not a market. We'll get onto how markets use supply and demand and the relevance of that in a little bit. But yeah, that's a very well labeled graph, Shrinik.
So well labeled.
Good
I think our very smart IB students can figure out what the labels need to
Can you
be.
explain it for us non-smart IB students? Okay, don't neglect half the class.
Yeah.
Are you going to be taking that test?
Okay.
No, but I'd like to understand this.
This is harassment, not everyone.
Okay. So
My friend Zach will be over here.
Shrinik, you drew up upside down.
Oh no.
Shrinik, what are
yeah.
you doing?
We'll have you guys.
No one pointed it out.
Guys, it's fine. Keep rolling.
What are you talking about? That was fine.
Oh no, wait.
That's
You spelled chocolate
that's
wrong.
supply.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, that is a supply curve.
Top one is supply, and you put it up, and you put a little asterisk.
So this, at $1, you demand 10. At 2, you demand 8, and so forth on there. So as the price goes up, quantity demanded goes down. So it's got a negative slope.
How everything else works.
It's upside down. Yeah.
If the price of something goes up that you don't really need, such as like a really exorbitant lifestyle, then you're not gonna get it or be able to afford it really. So the actual
That
demands
is-
for that's going to go down.
Like the
That's
Ferrari.
we'll get on to that in the last presentation about elasticities. Okay, so this is just the basic idea of demand as per the very quality source Investopedia.com.
Oh, yeah.
So the idea is that the higher the price of goods, the less people want it. Makes a lot of sense. If something costs a lot more money, you would want to purchase it less. So if something's at an extremely good deal, you would buy it less. That's why places like the Dollar Tree are able to succeed. Because
That's why coupons even exist.
and
really.
like coupons exist exactly because people like buying things for cheaper, obviously. So market demand. This is basically just the demand on average of a market and the shift of that demand. So basically, what happens is that if on a like an individual demand can shift based on the individual's ability to pay. This shifts based on the market's ability to pay. So it's less predicated on a specific individual. So somebody who has, for example, more money would have a different, would have the ability to buy things differently, and this is more reflective of everyone rather than a specific person who either has more or less money. This is like kind of an average of the market, the ability of people to pay, or the ability and desire of people to pay for specific goods. So there are a lot of things that shift supply and demand, and this is just the demand shifts. And the things that shift demand aren't always price shifts. And so the things that shift that aren't that are things like income shifts. If you have less money, you're able to purchase less things, and so the demand for a product goes down. Preference shifts on a cultural level. So, for example, if something is trendy or popular, like those rubber band bracelets that were popular like 3 years ago, that would have an increase in demand.
There could also be very religious things. Another example of that would be like if a whole religion, or like the Christianity, said you need some specific thing right now, the demand for that's going to go up because of a religious reason. So a lot of people who are going to follow that religion are going to get that thing.
So price of substitute goods. So for example, if all you care about is eating vegetables, you don't actually care about the flavor of those vegetables, and like the price of corn goes down and you're buying broccoli because it's like the cheapest vegetable because you just want to like eat healthy, you don't actually care about the taste. Then maybe you switch to corn because corn price went down, and so as a
Primarily
result,
because it's subsidized.
yeah, well, as a result, the corn price went down, so you shift to that, and so the demand for broccoli is going to go down because more people are shifting to corn. Price of complementary goods. So if you need, so like for example, if you have a DVD player, if you need the DVD player to use the DVDs, and the price of a DVD player goes up, the demand for DVDs is going to go down. It's an example from 2008 because nobody uses DVD players anymore. But yeah, it's the same idea.
Yeah. Really, Jenna? You still use a DVD player?
Oh, and the VHS for sure.
Oh yeah, the Betamax. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So like, there are a huge amount of things that we can go into that could actually change the supply and demand curve, just based on like your personal religion, your sexual orientation, anything. These all are huge factors in changing the supply and demand of specific products around the world.
Yeah, and so like a population or demographic change is another thing that can change. So for example, if you have like a war, right, then people from the ages of like 19 to 27 or something like that, depending on the draft age, all those people aren't going to be in America. And so prices that are targeting those specific demographic, or goods that are targeting those specific demographics, are going to go down. You're going to have, like, the companies specifically targeting those people have less demand because that demographic is no longer able to purchase their goods.
Okay. Shift along means a change in price, and shift of means a change in the non-price determinant. So the non-price determinant was what we talked about before, which would be the fact of like going back to a religious example. If your religion wants you to do something, then you're gonna want to get that good or whatever that you're buying, and that's gonna be really a huge thing in the change in the shift of.
So, to explain what this means, the shift along versus the shift of, if you have this graph right here, right? Say you go from $1 to $2. That's going to be a shift along the curve, right? So you went from this point to this point as the price changed. If you had a shift in a non-price determinant, something that changed the actual curve of the graph, you'd have something that went like this. If demand went up, or if demand went down, something like this. And this would be as a result not of a price change, but as a change of something else that was a price. So if the curve is shifting, that means that there's a change of a non-price determinant. If you're just moving along the curve, that's a change in price or a change in quantity.
Yeah, so like, just more in layman's terms, in a sense, a shift of would be the whole line shifting one way or the other, and a shift along would mean something on the actual line changing. So yeah, just visually that would happen.
Supply. Supply and demand have very similar principles. So we're going to spend less time on supply because the
You got the
we're starting
basic
to make.
idea of what supply
Yes.
is from demand, basically.
So supply demonstrates the qualities that will be sold at a certain price. Yeah.
It goes upward.
Yep. And so the law of supply is exactly the opposite of the law of demand. Sorry. There's a positive correlation between quantity of a good and its price. So if you have an increase in quantity, you'll see an increase in price. And then there's something else that's called the vertical supply. Yeah. So vertical supply basically means there's only a limited supply of something. So if you like movie theater, right? There's a certain point at which you only have a certain amount of, you only have a certain number of seats no matter what you do. So that supply will never shift. So if you only have like 80 seats at a movie theater, which is because it's a small movie theater, then like no matter what happens in the market, you'll never have an increase in the supply for that movie theater.
Okay. Yeah. Non-price determinants of supply would be like cost of production, technology, prices of related goods, expectations of prices, subsidies, and number of firms.
So, kind of explain, if you have an increase in the cost of production of something, you're going to see a decrease in its supply because it's more costly to make and it's less efficient. If you have new technology, that could actually increase the amount of a good supply because it's easier to make, and as a result, it's less expensive, so more people will make it. Prices of related goods. So what will happen here is if you see, for example, an increase in, if you're again going back to the broccoli corn example, if your farm is producing corn and all of a sudden the price of broccoli goes way up, then your farm might switch to producing broccoli as a result because you want to make the most amount of money. So price of related goods basically means that producers will shift to the most efficient and the most expensive things that they can produce in order to make the most amount of profits. The expectation of prices just means that if you expect a price of something to go up, then you might not sell it immediately, and so there might be a dwindling supply of a product while the expectation of that product is to go up. That's something that happens a lot of the time in like the stock market. Subsidies, pretty straightforward. If something gets subsidized, more people will produce it because it's more efficient to produce. And the number of firms, if you have an increase or decrease in the number of firms, you'll have a according increase or decrease in the amount supplied as more supplies emerge or less supplies emerge.
Yeah, and a more modern example of this, instead of the farming example, would be a firm called Corning, which makes glass or Gorilla Glass, and is the forefront of this. They're creating Gorilla Glasses a lot stronger, and to make this, they're revolutionizing the process in which you make that Gorilla Glass by actually making it a lot cheaper to actually get the equipment to make the glass, as well as using a lot less energy as well to make that glass, and making the whole process more efficient.
So, equilibrium. Basically, it is the intersection point. So
where we all want to be.
It's where we all want to be. So market equilibrium probably never gets reached ever, but while
it might be reached for a certain, like a small amount of time, and then go somewhere else. But we're never at equilibrium for a very long period of time at all. We'll be there maybe once or twice for a very short period of time, and then go somewhere else on the graph, basically. But where we want to be is equilibrium.
So the book spends a lot of time talking about equilibrium, but we don't really see the point. So basically all equilibrium is that as supply and demand shift based on the graph I showed over there, either based on like non-price determinants resulting in shifts of demand or shifts along demand, what you'll see is that demand and supply will intersect at different points accordingly. And so the point that they'll intersect at is called equilibrium. It's where there's the perfect amount of supply for the perfect amount demanded. So basically you will never have an excess of goods. You'll never have an excess of demand. Everything will be in perfect harmony.
It's basically a perfect world.
Yeah. So if assuming ceteris paribus, this is what is perfect. Like if you reach this, then your company is doing exactly the most efficient thing possible.
There's no excess of supply or not enough, and there's not too much demand and not too little demand. It's perfect.
Okay. Resource allocation.
Okay, so resource allocation. Markets balance themselves out because suppliers shift to more lucrative fields. So this is kind of in a sense of, like that first point is really talking kind of sense about the free market and really how the market itself will balance itself out.
Yeah, it's kind of like people who demand goods will go to the cheapest for the best quality, and people who supply goods will do whatever is the most efficient. It's a very free market ideology, and we'll get into that at the end of this. Allocative efficiency is basically having the least amount of surplus possible. So if you're basically reaching equilibrium at all points, then you're not going to have a shortage or a surplus. So based on this graph here, the idea is that if your supply caps out here for this demand, then you're going to have a shortage, or if your supply caps out here for this demand, you're going to have this amount of shortage because you're not going to be able to fulfill this amount of people's demand for the good. Similarly up here, if you supply this amount for this demand, then you're going to have a surplus because you're going to have too many goods because only this amount of people wants it, and you're making this amount of the good. So that's why when you reach equilibrium and there's no distance between the 2 points, you're going to have the best possible allocation because the number of people who want the good will also have that good.
And you're not producing too much and losing
Yeah.
money. Like for example, if you're like a corn farmer or something, then you're not producing too much corn where not everyone's buying it, and you're not producing too little where you're losing money because people are going to other places to get more corn. Is that the right point?
So here's another surplus graph. So the idea here is that if you produce anything at this level, below the equilibrium, you're going to have a producer surplus. Yes, so you're going to have consumers who don't have, you're going to have consumers who don't have enough goods. So you're going to see a surplus on the side of the producer, a surplus of demand. So you're going to have too much, you're going to have more people demanding the good than supplying it. Similarly, for a consumer surplus, this basically means that you're going to have a surplus for the consumer. The consumer is going to have too much supply for their demand, so there's going to be too many goods in the markets.
Yeah,
and
so like
above and below that equilibrium point are where the surpluses take place.
yeah, so like a consumer surplus would be like for corn again, like there would be so much corn inside the market that like they're like not everyone's gonna buy it. And a producer surplus would be where the producer is producing too much.
Yep. And so to finish off with the end, the real warning at the end of this chapter is that a lot of these supplies, or a lot of these principles are assuming ceteris paribus, and they're assuming this kind of idea that markets will work themselves out at all times, which hasn't historically always been the case. And so while the laws of supply and demand are extremely important, it's also important to note that there are also larger economic ideas at play, and you consider those when you're thinking of economics as a whole. Supply and demand, while they are important, aren't the end-all be-all for all economic issues.
Yeah, and just going into one example that's really important about like if when you're going and buying something that's limited edition, then they do that. Like the people who are producing that that good are doing that so they can make more money because there's a lower supply of it, so there's a higher demand. For example, like there'd just be a really what is it? What is the band or whatever that created one album or something? Yeah. The Wu-Tang Clan created one album. It was only in one place, and that because of that, the demand for that went up, and they actually sold it for $5 million. So that's how people can actually take advantage of the supply and demand curve and make more money. So just think about that when you're buying.
And
stuff.
yeah, people. There's a lot of factors at play. Keep these in mind. They're not the only things.